They called it a lateral move to broaden my operational knowledge. My boss and my protege, hand in hand, told me the company needed fresh energy and leadership. At 48, after 22 years building the logistics division from the ground up, I was offered a demotion to a symbolic advisory role. My protege took my office, my team, my 5-year plan. The humiliation was public, surgical, and meant to make me quit. I didn't. I showed up every day to my windowless closet. I listened. I learned. And I began quietly building the solution to the one problem they didn't know was coming, the problem that would make them beg for my blueprint. Hello. Welcome to Hurt Stories. There is a physics to power in the corporate world. Potential energy, the kind built from loyalty, institutional knowledge, and quiet competence, is often mistaken for inertia. They see the object at rest. They do not see the mass, the history, the stored force. They assume it is stationary because it lacks the frantic, directionless motion they mistake for progress. And in their arrogance, they push. They believe they are clearing an obstruction. They do not realize they are releasing a coil, spring-loaded over decades, that will snap back with a force that redefines the entire landscape. For 22 years, I was Atlas Logistics, not the name on the door, but the architecture beneath the floor. I joined when it was a startup, a chaotic, thrilling mess of big dreams and missed deliveries. I built the systems from scratch, the routing algorithms on spreadsheets before there was software that could do it, the driver protocols, the vendor negotiations. I turned chaos into a clockwork engine that became the envy of our industry. The company grew, went public, became a behemoth. I grew with it, becoming Senior Vice President of Global Logistics. My office had a corner view. My team was my family. My protege, a young man named Colin whom I'd plucked from an internship and mentored for 7 years, was my right hand, my intended successor, or so I believed. The first tremor was subtle. A new CEO, Jordan Vance, was brought in from a flashier, tech-adjacent world. He spoke in phrases like disruptive synergies and pivoting the paradigm. My world was built on reliability, not disruption, on diesel and data, not paradigms. He'd look at my meticulously maintained profit margins and say, "But where's the moonshot, Gabrielle?" I'd explain that in logistics, the moonshot is a container ship arriving on time, in full, during a global pandemic. He'd smile a thin, dismissive smile. Colin started to change. He began dressing sharper, adopting Jordan's jargon. He'd return from one-on-one meetings with the CEO with a new, evaluative gleam in his eye when he looked at my strategies. He started questioning my legacy approaches in team meetings, always with a deferential, "Just playing devil's advocate, Gabby." The team would shift uncomfortably. I'd answer calmly, explaining the decades of reasoning behind each protocol. But the seed was planted. Legacy became a synonym for obsolete in that room. The push didn't come as a shove. It came as a perfectly choreographed, velvet-gloved assassination. Jordan and Colin called me into the corner office. My old office now felt like his stage. They were the picture of compassionate concern. Jordan began, "Gabrielle, your contributions are the bedrock of this company, literally." He spread his hands. "But the world is changing. We need to energize our leadership, bring in fresh perspectives at the helm to navigate this new digital frontier." Colin nodded, his face a mask of pained respect. "Jordan and I have been talking about the future. We feel the logistics division needs a new type of leadership, more agile, more digitally native. We see you transitioning into a vital, senior advisory role, a corporate fellow of logistics strategy. You'd be freed from day-to-day management burdens to focus on big-picture, cross-company initiatives." The title was a neon-lit sarcophagus. A corporate fellow was where they put executives they needed to ghost but couldn't fire. It reported to no one and everyone. It had no team, no budget, no authority. My office would be moved to a windowless interior room near the IT server racks, a space colloquially known as the drawer. "This is a demotion," I said, my voice miraculously steady. It's a lateral move to broaden your operational knowledge, Jordan countered smoothly. A chance to mentor at the highest strategic level. Colin couldn't meet my eyes. The team will miss you terribly, Gabby, but this is what's best for the company's growth trajectory. They were offering me a choice. Accept the humiliation quietly or quit and forfeit a significant retention package tied to my tenure. It was engineered to make me leave. They wanted my division, my team, my legacy, but without the inconvenient weight of my experience questioning their moonshots. They wanted the clockwork engine, but they wanted to be the ones to claim they'd invented it. The walk back to my office through the open-plan floor was a perp walk. The news had already leaked. Pity, schadenfreude, and fear flickered in the eyes of my colleagues. By the time I packed my single box of personal items, a framed photo of my daughters, a stress relief toy from a vendor, a decades-old award, Colin was already directing facilities on where to move his standing desk into my space. They pushed me down. They expected me to fall, to crumble, to disappear. I made a different choice. I decided to become a root. I showed up on Monday to the drawer. It was as bleak as promised. Gray walls, fluorescent buzz, the distant hum of servers. I put my photo on the bare metal desk. I logged into my system, my access now strangely both limited and broad. I could see everything, influence nothing. I became a ghost in the machine. My revenge was not bitterness. It was attention. I attended every cross-functional meeting I was invited to, and many I wasn't, but my new nebulous title allowed me to quietly join. I said nothing. I just listened. I listened to Jordan's grand plans for blockchain-integrated logistics without any understanding of port regulatory law. I listened to Colin, now VP of Logistics, stumble through explanations of my old routing algorithms, trying to tweak them for efficiency and causing minor, costly delays. I listened to the worried whispers of my old team, now demoralized under Colin's insecure, micromanaging style. And I began to see the crack, the fatal flaw in their shiny new paradigm. In their drive for digital transformation and asset-light agility, Jordan had championed a massive shift toward a single, cutting-edge logistics software platform, synchronic, and had bet our entire operation on a handful of hyper-efficient, third-party logistics partners, 3PLs. He'd called it leaning into the future. I saw it as building a castle on a single, brittle pillar of sand. All our eggs, in one digital basket, controlled by outside vendors. While they were looking up at their moonshot, I started digging in the dirt they'd buried me in. From my powerless advisory role, I began a clandestine, deeply personal project. I reached out, one by one, to the old network. Not the slick software salesmen, but the people. The grizzled port master in Long Beach I worked with for 15 years. The legendary trucking dispatcher in Kansas City who could move anything, anywhere, on a handshake. The steely owner of a small, family-owned regional freight company we'd stopped using because they weren't scalable. I called them. I bought them coffee when I was in the area. I didn't ask for anything. I just listened. I heard their frustrations with the new, impersonal, algorithm-driven systems. I heard their loyalty to me, to the way we used to do business, with a phone call, with trust, with human understanding of a storm closing a mountain pass or a dockworkers' strike. Simultaneously, I used my ghostly system access to run analyses. Quietly, in the dead of night, I modeled scenarios. A cyber attack on Synchronic's cloud servers, the bankruptcy of our primary 3PL, a major geopolitical event shutting down a key shipping lane. The numbers were catastrophic. The company's lean, agile supply chain had no redundancy, no backup, no plan B. It was a house of cards in a hurricane season. I documented it all, not in formal reports, but in a private, encrypted log, a diary of the coming storm. I didn't send it to anyone. I waited. I tended my network of human relationships, my analog web in a digital world. The storm hit on a Tuesday in March. It wasn't one disaster. It was a perfect storm of three. Synchronic's platform was crippled by a ransomware attack that locked down our entire visibility and management system. On the same day, our largest 3PL declared Chapter 11 bankruptcy, its assets frozen, our shipments stranded in warehouses across 6 states. And as a coup de grace, a labor dispute shut down the major West Coast ports. Chaos, absolute, screaming, multi-million-dollar per hour chaos. From my tomb in the drawer, I could hear the panic echoing down the hall. The emergency leadership meetings were pure theater of the absurd. Jordan was shouting about calling the software company's CEO. Colin was pale, scrolling through his phone, utterly paralyzed. The digital native leadership had no map for the real world. They had outsourced their brains and their brawn, and now both were gone. I waited. I let the temperature rise. For 2 days, I watched the company hemorrhage clients, money, and reputation. Then, on the morning of the 3rd day, I put on my best suit. I walked calmly down the hall to the boardroom where the Emergency Crisis Committee was in a state of meltdown. I didn't knock. I opened the door. All eyes turned to me, the ghost, the relic, the woman in the drawer. Jordan's face was etched with rage and fear. "Not now, Gabrielle." "I have the solution," I said, my voice quiet but cutting through the din like a laser. A bitter laugh from Colin. "What? A memo on best practices?" I ignored him, looking only at the most senior board member, Eleanor Shaw, a woman I respected who was looking at this circus with undisguised horror. "Eleanor, the Synchronic platform will be down for a minimum of 7 more days. The bankruptcy proceedings will tie up our assets for weeks. The port shutdown will last at least 96 hours. We are losing our largest client, Medix Corp., in 6 hours when their surgical equipment fails to arrive. I can fix it." "How?" Jordan spat. "With a fax machine and a prayer." "With a phone," I said, holding up my simple smartphone. "And 22 years of relationships you tried to render obsolete." I turned back to Eleanor. "I need 2 things. Full, temporary operational authority over all logistics and supply chain decisions, and a dedicated, secure landline in my office. You have my blueprint for stabilization in your inbox. Sent 5 minutes ago." Eleanor, without looking away from me, said, "Do it." For the next 96 hours, I did not sleep. I worked from the drawer, now the beating heart of the company. My first call was to the port master in Long Beach. "Billy, it's Gabby. I need a favor. The Evercrest docking at Pier 42. I need containers MEDX 887 through 904 off first and routed to a private lot. I've got a team from Heartland Freight meeting them there." Heartland Freight was the small, family-owned firm we'd abandoned. The owner, Maria, took my call at 3 a.m. her time. "Maria, Gabby, I need every truck you have and every truck your cousins have heading to these coordinates. I'll wire the deposit now." I bypassed the dead software, working from paper manifests and memory. I activated my analog web. The grizzled dispatcher in Kansas City rerouted 100 trucks cross-country. A former competitor, whom I'd helped out during a fuel crisis years ago, lent us warehouse space in Chicago. I negotiated directly with unions, with port authorities, with airline cargo handlers. I spoke the language of crisis, of grit, of mutual obligation. The language Jordan and Colin didn't know existed. The Medix Corp shipment arrived with 17 minutes to spare. The bleeding stopped. Then the healing began. Within a week, we had established a makeshift, resilient, multi-threaded network that kept our most critical clients whole. It was ugly. It was expensive. It was human. And it worked. At the board meeting 2 weeks later, I presented not just the crisis report, but my encrypted log. I showed the timeline, my warnings in advance, the modeling of the single point of failure. I contrasted it with the brittle, outsourced strategy Jordan and Colin had championed. The evidence was unassailable. Jordan resigned to pursue other opportunities before the meeting ended. Colin was escorted from the building. his VP title as meaningless as the jargon he'd used to cloak his incompetence. They offered me my old job back, the corner office, a massive promotion I refused. I had risen higher than that office. I had seen the view from the bedrock, and I had learned that true power isn't in the title on the door, but in the strength of the connections you forge in the dark. I accepted a new role, one I designed, Chief Resilience Officer. I report directly to the board. My mandate is to build anti-fragile systems. My office is still in the drawer. It reminds me. My team is my reactivated network, now formalized into a human continuity protocol. We are the company's immune system. They pushed me down into the dirt, thinking they were burying me. They didn't understand they were planting me. And from that dark, silent place, I grew a forest of connections so deep, so strong, that when their brittle world snapped, it was my roots that held the entire enterprise together. They gave me the perspective of the ground, and from there, I learned how to hold up the sky. The push wasn't my end. It was my launch, and I rose higher than their small imaginations could ever have conceived. Thanks for listening. If you want to hear more story like this, please like the video and subscribe the channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified.